Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad. In today's show, we are going to talk about two major topics. The one that relates to the situation that is unfolding in the besieged Gaza Strip as the relentless, indiscriminate and disproportionate Israeli bombardment continues even after 1 month, despite international calls for an immediate ceasefire. The second topic that we are going to take up for discussion in today's show relates to IMF review mission headed by its mission head, Mr. Nathan Poto, who is in Pakistan to talk with the Pakistani authorities and to review Pakistani authorities' performance in the first quarter of the current fiscal year. That would be our topic for the second segment of today's show. Let's begin with the first one. It's been almost a month now that indiscriminate, disproportionate and relentless Israeli bombardment on the innocent people of Gaza continues. As per the Gaza's health ministry's statistics, over 10,000 innocent people in Gaza have lost their lives, which include over 4,000 innocent children. Now, as this particular tragedy of unfathomable proportions unfolds, the United Nations Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, continues to raise his voice for the innocent people in Gaza. As he has said, let me quote, that Gaza is becoming a graveyard for children, unquote. He has also once again renewed his call for an immediate ceasefire over there. He went on to say, let me quote another statement of Mr. Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, that the nightmare in Gaza is more than a humanitarian crisis, it is a crisis of humanity, unquote. On the other hand, we have seen Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has hinted at taking the responsibility of the security of Gaza after its fighting, the current fighting, which it terms as fighting against Hamas or to eliminate the Palestinian resistance group Hamas would end. He has also ruled out any possibility of a general ceasefire until the release of the captives taken by Hamas after the 7th of October incursion into Israel. We've also seen that Gaza's government media office has released the details of the destruction of the last month, saying that around 30,000 tons of explosives were used by Israel in the bombing. That is an average of 82 tons per square kilometers. Also, we have seen Iranian President Mr. Ibrahim Raisi says the US vetoed the resolution on establishment of humanitarian pauses, which has paved the way for Israeli regime to carry out more acts of murder. Now, despite international condemnations and call for an immediate ceasefire, why Israel continues with its brutal aggression, especially against the innocent people of Gaza on the pretext of eliminating the Palestinian resistance group Hamas, and who is finally going to take the lead to stop all this, what is happening with the people of Gaza? Or will the innocent children of Gaza Strip continue to suffer and pay the price for this? And will Israel take the full security under its own control of the Gaza Strip? And what would be happening next? We'll try to understand and take the answers of these very important questions. For that, we are honored to have been joined in the studio by Mr. Bakir. Younas is Arab journalist. Mr. Younas, thank you very much for taking time out for Views on News tonight. We really appreciate that. On Skype at the same time, we are being joined by Brigadier retired Waqar Hassan Khan. He is senior analyst. Brigadier Waqar, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on Views on News tonight. We really appreciate that. Let me begin the discussion with you, Mr. Younas. Now, there have been international condemnations. Majority of the countries calling for an immediate ceasefire. We also saw that very global opinion that was expressed so openly in the form of that United Nations General Assembly resolution of 120 members calling for an urgent ceasefire. Despite all this condemnation, despite all that call for humanitarian ceasefire, why do you think Israeli aggression continues unabated? What this particular aggression with impunity is indicative of?
Number one, this shows that, or the Jewish occupiers want to show that they are above the law, they are above international law, and what they want to do is nobody can stop them. This is a very important target for them, because you know what the Palestinians did. It's actually they have changed the whole equation. Palestinians have shown them that you are as occupiers, you don't have the right to stay on the land, and we can defend our land, and we still can attack. So now they think that they have to move in a way to annihilate the people in Gaza, to terminate any ability of the people to resist, to refuse the occupation. So what they want to do, they want to kill as much as they can from the coming generation, so nobody can claim for his right, and they want to stop. They claim that they are able to stop the fighters from Gaza, which is actually totally wrong. We always watch on the news how they are bombarding, but we haven't seen them how they are attacking Gaza. They are actually on the ground. They are so weak, and this weakness, because of their weakness, they try to revenge from the children and the women. So this is an unbalanced equation. On the other side, as we see,
I seek your pardon for the interjection over here. When you talk of the equation being imbalanced, okay, let's go a little back in time on October the 7th again. Many in the world, across the world, had been asking as to what was the need on the part of Hamas to carry out that incursion. After that, the kind and the scale and the proportion of the damage and the destruction that we have seen on this side of the border in Gaza, where people are suffering on an unfathomable scale, including children. It is clearly an asymmetric equation, as you have already mentioned. Have we seen any sort of retaliation after that incursion on the part of Hamas or any Palestinian resistance group towards Israel?
First of all, the question is why Hamas did this action. Just keep in mind, it was not only Hamas, it was Hamas and other groups as well. Why they did this? Because their land is occupied since 78 years. Who says that Palestine is free? Is it in our hand? Is it in the Palestinians' hand? It is with the Israeli hand. The Israelis have occupied Palestine. So the Palestinians have gathered themselves, rebuilt their own fighters, and they have attacked their occupiers. So this is a legal action. If you go to any any international laws or any local laws, you will find that we have the right to don't we have the right to defend our country?
A similar sort of thing came forth when we talk about the United Nations Secretary General. He said that this particular Hamas attack didn't happen in vacuum. Over this particular statement, when he made it, there was a huge reaction by the Israeli side. So we understand that been subjugation, especially over the last 50 years, on the part of the Israeli regime and its authorities and troops on the innocent people of Palestine. But the kind of destruction and the damage that is being faced now, even there have been condemnations, but there doesn't seem to be any sort of moment when this particular brutal Israeli aggression comes to a halt. So what about Hamas consider the release of all those captives it has taken? Because we have seen Benjamin Netanyahu making a condition of release of those hostages with any sort of a ceasefire.
Today, Hamas announced that they were ready to release 12 of the hostages, but Israelis have refused. They have asked them again. Yes, Israelis have refused. Today, Hamas have announced, in the morning time, they have announced that we were ready to release another 12 hostages, civilians, but the Israelis refused. The Israelis are not giving space, time, for the releasement of the hostages. One. Two, Biden himself, Blinken himself said that we are trying to negotiate with the Israelis to calm down, to stop, to hold the fire for some time, ceasefire for some time, a humanitarian ceasefire in order to release the hostages and in order to give aid to people in Gaza. Israelis are refusing. They are saying we don't care about the hostages anymore. What they want to remove Gaza. They want to remove the people of Gaza. They want to destroy everybody in Gaza. They said, one of the ministers said that we want to bombard Gaza with a nuclear weapon. So this is the mentality we are dealing with. Who said that they care about the hostages? They don't care. They have what they call it Hannibal law, which means that anyone kept goes hostages by the other party, the Israeli are allowed to kill him, even if this goes, for the killing of the hostages.
So according to that doctrine, they don't even care about the hostages that have been taken by Hamas. They are even ready to sacrifice them, or
it is not a sacrifice. It is let them go. It's not a sacrifice.
considering them a burden on themselves?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, let me proceed towards Brigadier Waqar. Brigadier Waqar, we have seen a failure on the part of the United Nations Security Council, but there was a significant resolution that was passed at the United Nations General Assembly, 120 members voting for immediate ceasefire. Despite a continuous voice also raised by the United Nations Secretary General, why this brutal aggression, disproportionate bombardment in which so many innocent children have lost their lives already continues till date, even after the passage of 1 month?
Yeah, I think I will. I'd like to just go back into time. It's very important to connect with the history. When Goria came after 1948 occupation, they came up with the Dahiba policy, which is basically mowing the grass. So Palestinians were not even considered animals, unfortunately, but grass. And the strategy was the moment one of the generation raises their head, you mow it down. And this is an official declared policy of Israel. So I think when the Secretary General says that it never came out of nowhere, there were definite reasons. So one has to see that. So initially we saw the Arab states fighting wars like 48, then 56 and I campaign, 73, 67. And then came Camp David, and then gradually I think the Arab world, I would say military support to Palestine almost vanished, and they were left on their own. Now Marwan Bishara is one of the senior journalists who writes for Al Jazeera. He said, I think something which is very pronounced, that instead of dying on their knees in their home, they decided to stand and fight on their feet and take the war into Israel. I think if you look at the frustration, definitely normalization process was started with the spirit, but Palestinians are being sidelined. And if you look at the killings the Israelis have done through Daiwa policy, this is the fourth intifada. So it means this is the fourth armed resistance. Initially, it remained more political protests, and now it's become, I would say, a war. And there was also a kind of, if you look at Hamas' strategic objectives, one was, of course, to bring the attention, despite I think they knew it, that there are going to be a lot of atrocities and killings. And the international community had to jump in, and I think Palestinian problem has been highlighted. Number two, they've been able to isolate Israel very badly. Today, if you look at, I think there was a survey carried out in Europe and America, 76% people are now supporting the Palestinian cause because they can see that it is brutal oppression by the colonists, by the Zionist regime. And mind you, even within Israel, it's almost like that. 76% still would not like what the Zionist, let's say, leadership is doing. So one, I think, objective they have been able to achieve. The other is to dent the military credibility of Israel, as I think our friend was mentioning, that on ground they are not as strong. Israel uses a lot of firepower because I think they're scared of going and contacting. So that's why you find, and mind you, this if it's now being considered 30,000 tons. Ammunition has been delivered, which is two Hiroshimas. Hiroshima was 15,000 ton, and there was an Israeli minister, trying to threaten that they are going to use nuclear weapons. They've already used equivalent to two nuclear bombs of the size of Hiroshima. And I've seen picture today, somebody was comparing. I think it is worse. You look at the density of population. Gaza is almost 22 lakh or 2.2 million people cramped in a space of 350 to 400 square kilometers. So I think the other is the resistance groups that people don't realize, like Hezbollah coming in, then you have Ansarullah coming from Yemen, and then is of course waiting in the wing is Iraqi resistance, the Kataib Hezbollah. So, and I think they are directly or indirectly involved. So war has already
Right,
expanded, become international. It has pulled
right.
a superpower two aircraft carriers into the war. Delta Force has moved in, and I think instead of humiliation and dying, if you look at total casualties since 1948, including I think the first time they were thrown out of their homes. It runs into almost 500,000 people, including children. So this loss definitely is tragic, but I think it has exposed uh, the international community, so-called international community. It has also exposed the Western, people who are champions of democracy and human rights. Even look at rating of channels. Nobody wants to see BBC, CNN, or France 24. People are more glued to Al Jazeera because they're showing the facts. So I think this has to be, the bottom line has to be understood. And probably time is now for a two-state solution, because
Right.
Hamas has probably communicated even to Israel that in case Palestinians can't live in peace, then definitely Israel can't be in peace. And I think it's a final call. So things are expanding. There's talk of maybe strikes
Right,
in the
right.
Gulf region or in
Brigadier
Red
Waqar,
Sea.
your point is well taken, very comprehensively. You've shed light on the historical perspective also. And now, Mr. Younas, when we talk about this particular figure, which has been shared by media office of the Gaza's government, around 30,000 tons of explosives used, when we talk about the strategic objectives of Hamas, many who actually support the Palestinian cause saying many strategic objectives of Hamas have been achieved. When we compare to the kind of destruction, the kind of explosives which have been used, as Brigadier Waqar mentioned, it's equivalent to two Hiroshimas now. Then the innocent people who've lost their lives, and still Israel continues with that aggression. So when we compare this whole equation, so why can't we decipher that this particular thing has swayed more on the Israeli side rather than on the side of the Palestinian cause?
See, what the Israelis are doing, actually, it's a crime. They are actually criminals and they are doing crimes. What we are doing is illegal work. We are defending our land. We are asking for our land. And despite the weakness we have compared to them, we are the people actually who owns this land. We are the people who owns Al-Aqsa Mosque. Just keep in mind this whole fight came out on Al-Aqsa Mosque. The Israelis saying that beneath Al-Aqsa Mosque there is the Temple of Sulaiman. We said, no, this is a holy place. This is our first Qibla. Nobody should touch it. They occupied the land, and now they kept doing desecration. And recently they were asking, they have sacrificed some kind of animals over there, some kind, in order to start demolishing Al-Aqsa Mosque. So then this group, Hamas, Al-Jihad, others came into fight, and they are trying to stop the desecration of Al-Aqsa Mosque, of Al-Qibla Awwal, a holy place for the whole Muslims. Keep in mind, now after this attack, what Hamas have done, what the others, I forget the names, the other groups in Gaza who have attacked Israel on the 7th of October, the Israeli army have really broken. Their will of fight have gone down. What they are doing is kind of revenge. They can't control Gaza. They can't enter Gaza.
Who is going to stop this revenge, this brutal aggression? We have seen repeated calls, especially when we talk about the United Nations Secretary General himself, but they haven't they've fallen on the deaf ears of the Israeli authorities. Benjamin Netanyahu is still saying that a general ceasefire is totally out of consideration until all the captives are released. So who is going to take the responsibility of stopping that revenge or the brutal aggression?
Either Arab countries, Muslim countries, or international community. These are the three, what you can say, people who have the authority to stop this fight. They can ask, they can force to stop the Israelis from their attack, and they can threaten them of disarming them. They should be disarmed. This Israeli army have to be disarmed. This, the air force of them, it have to be taken from them. You see, we have Turkey, we have many other countries who's very strong, who can just say.
So what about the possibility? What about the possibility? We saw there was an extraordinary meeting of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. There was a suggestion in the joint statement that was released after this extraordinary meeting of perhaps United Nations considering to send an international protection force. So what's the possibility of that? Is it a doable thing on the part of international community if the UN takes a lead role in making that force and sending or dispatching it for the protection?
But the protection of the Palestinians again? So we as the Palestinians will have the same problem. Okay, they might stop this war, they might stop killing the Palestinians, but the cause of this whole action will not be taken. The main cause, the main target is to get the liberation of Palestine, to remove the Jewish from our land, to clean Palestine from the Israelis. So this is the main target the Palestinians are working for. You have to keep in mind, we haven't seen anybody inside Gaza saying why Hamas did this, why Al-Jihad did this, why the fighters did this. No, because people know they are doing this for their own. this is their sacred place. This is their own property. This is their land. So they know that their sons, their generation, their youngsters have gone stand for them, and they have sacrificed their life for it. So actually, this kind of sacrifice should be there. It should not be only with the Palestinians. The Palestinians have set a great example. Other countries have to come forward and also sacrifice for the same, for the sake of freedom, for the sake of sacrificing, for the sake of sacred places, for the sake of Masjid al-Aqsa, for the sake of the holy place. So I think what we Palestinians have done is a great sacrifice, and what this sacrifice is an example now, a huge example. Nobody can say the Palestinians haven't done this. So now it is the other Muslim Ummah have to stand with the Palestinians. They have to rally behind the Palestinians. They have to stand with them. They have to say, okay, what the Palestinians did, what is not for some materialistic target. It was for a target of, it was a holy target. There's a mosque being desecrated. There's a holy place being desecrated. We know as a Muslim this is a very important place. So that's what the Palestinians did for. And I think now it's the time for the whole Muslim Ummah to stand with the Palestinians.
Right. So what about when we talk about this statement by Benjamin Netanyahu, Israeli Prime Minister? First of all, he rules out the possibility of general ceasefire. Then he hints at taking the responsibility of security of the Gaza Strip for an indefinite period. If he goes on with the kind of rampage, the kind of offensive is already, the fire and the fury is already unleashed. Is there any possibility that Israeli regime could have that very complete capture of Gaza in the coming days?
According to what we listen from Gaza, there's a strong resistance still there. I don't think the Israeli army can stay inside Gaza. They have already tried. We see it in 1987, when 1980, when the Faad started at that time, the resistance work started. Since till 2005, then the Israelis said, we give up. We're out from Gaza. We can't stay in Gaza. So this is the thing. They actually left Gaza because the resistance of people of Gaza is so strong. And I think they don't want, or I don't think they have the ability to come back and now again stay in Gaza. They might, they are showing that they are strong. They are trying to show that, yes, we can stay, we can control, we will do it. But I believe we have a huge trust in our fighters. We have huge trust in the people of Gaza. And we have also trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because this fight didn't come for any simple reason. This fight erupted for a holy reason. So I think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not let the Palestinians away.
So what about if they carry forward with the ground offensive as they're carrying out? What about the possibility of annexing more territory for perhaps future illegal settlements?
It might happen, but you see, we have now the most of the places which actually was we call it like envelope of Gaza. The people who used to live there, the Israelis who used to live there, they actually left it, and they are not willing to come back. And they have left all Israel, and they went to their own country. And it was a surprise to the Palestinians to see that there were Americans among them, France among them, Belgians, but different nationalities. So this is the community, this kind of community actually united under this concept that this is a holy land for the Jewish. And we Muslims actually have to understand the other concept, that this is the whole land for the Muslims. And we have to unite. And I think if we united, Israelis won't come back. They won't stay in Gaza. I don't think they can stay anymore. They are trying. The army is trying to come again and again. But if you see today footage, another footage was released by the fighters, how they are attacking the tanks, how they're destroying the tanks. So yes, they are not on the ground. They are losing on the ground, and I don't think they can stay on the ground.
Right. Let me once again go back to Brigadier Waqar. Brigadier Waqar, what's your understanding as per this particular statement by Benjamin Netanyahu that Israel is going to take the responsibility of security for an indefinite period of Gaza? As Mr. Younas has said, there has been a strong resistance. There is a very unlikelihood of this particular possibility of Israeli forces of the regime taking a complete control of Gaza. What's your understanding? Will it be able to do that? And if it does, do you think it would have the similar sort of a backing, particularly from its closest ally, the US? Because we have seen earlier US President Joe Biden not endorsing such type of campaign on the part of Israeli authorities.
Yeah, I think I'll give you a military assessment and then we come to the strategic aspects. You give me time. We have been doing a daily analysis of the war from a military point of view, and being neutral, being a military man. I think one is that Israel has used a lot of firepower, But on ground, there are problems. For instance, their army doesn't comprise of regular fighters. Of course, there is a core of regular officers and soldiers, but mostly they are either reservists or people on call. What you've done. So when you enter into, like Russia faced in Grozny, when you enter into built-up areas in a city, even if it has been raised to ground. I would just quote Scott Ritter. Yesterday, he was on a redacted program, and he concluded, and he's a very senior, U.S. Marine officer. A lot of people follow him. He's an American. That not only they've lost morally, the Israelis and the West, but also militarily, because now is the time when they enter, they're going to be hand-to-hand fight. And if you look at how Hamas especially conducted themselves, and then there is a tunnel network. Even now we are getting reports that Hezbollah has also dug tunnel which even go, right into Israel in certain areas. And the tactics they've, let's say applied. So it's going to be one, very tough call. The other is the possibility of other groups jumping in, because now it's like Hamas is 130,000 rockets and missiles, and I don't think so that even the Iron Dome can, bear that much firepower. And then you have Houthis from Yemen. So I think the excess of resistance is going to increase the attacks. That's why US is now, let's say spending $14.5 billion just to boost up, because I think there is a lot use lot of ordnance. So I feel that in case, and I think Netanyahu's this is more of rhetoric. If you look at the resistance, the first and the further, second, I think this is the sixth time in last 2 decades the let's say Israeli forces have tried to enter Gaza or tried to conduct atrocities, and a lot of people lost their life. But the resistance has actually increased. Just ask a boy who survived today that what is going to become, when he grows up. So I think they are not raising these 20, let's say 2 million people are going to become fighters. So I think it's going to in the long run be very, very difficult for Israel. And the only thing is that probably Israel is looking at re-establishing its credibility and aura. They are looking for a fake notion of victory, and for that I think they're going to do a lot of bombing on the civilians.
Right, your
But on
point
the
is well taken.
hand-to-hand fight,
Brigadier
yeah,
retired
it's going to be very
Brigadier Waqar, I'm unfortunately short of time. I'll have to once again proceed to Mr. Younas. Mr. Younas, your quick comments regarding if that, as you already mentioned, and Brigadier Waqar also agrees that there is a huge resistance, very strong resistance from within the Gaza Strip, and it's very unlikely that there could be a complete capture of Gaza Strip on the part of Israeli authorities and troops. In case, with a bare minimum chances, if that happens, do you think it's going to be endorsed by US, the closest ally of the US, of Israel?
That's for sure. That's for sure. We have seen how U.S. is supporting Israel. We have seen that how it's all actually now it's U.S. fight. It seems like it's a U.S. fighting in Gaza, not Israel. We have seen how Blinken's moving. We have seen how he refused ceasefire. We have seen how he refused the request from the foreign ministers, Arab foreign ministers, to ceasefire. So I think yes, it's American who will actually either they will be becoming in the front line, but I have to mention the Palestinians have two things: either they win or they go for martyrs, and that's what they have said. That we'll continue fighting, either we win or we have martyr, and that's I think there are two options which the Israelis can't deal with.
Right, Mr. Bakir, Younas, Arab journalist, thank you very much for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. On Skype, we were joined by Brigadier retired Waqar Hassan Khan, senior analyst. Thank you very much for your time, Brigadier Waqar, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. That brings us to the end of the first segment of today's show. For the second segment, we'll be talking about the IMF review mission present here in Pakistan, having negotiations with Pakistani authorities regarding the economic performance in the first quarter. For that, stay tuned. We'll be back after a short break.
India is aggressively pursuing Israel's Palestinian occupation model in occupied Jammu and
Welcome back to Views on News. The IMF review mission headed by its mission chief Nathan Porter is in Pakistan to review the Pakistan's authorities' performance on the targets that was set in the $3 billion standby arrangement that was reached between Pakistani authorities and the IMF in July. And now IMF review mission chief Mr. Nathan Porter has appreciated government's commitment in meeting the first quarter targets and has also commended government's efforts taken in some critical areas. Also, we have seen quite a positive tone coming from the Pakistani authorities, including the caretaker Prime Minister, Mr. Anwarul Haqqaq, as well as caretaker Finance Minister, Dr. Shamshad Akhtar. They've also appreciated the continued support and assistance from the fund for the economic stabilization of Pakistan. And specifically, caretaker Finance Minister Dr. Shamshad Akhtar has also reaffirmed government's commitment to working closely with the IMF on the successful completion of this standby agreement and also bringing in economic stability in the country. The government had to take some very tough yet important measures in order to bring in the economic stabilization, and also those measures included tight control on expenditures, comprehensive reforms and measures which were taken by Federal Board of Revenue, and also the measures regarding electricity and gas tariffs. Now, what is to be expected, because these negotiations between Pakistani authorities as well as the IMF review mission are going to last for 2 weeks. What could be expected as an outcome after the completion of these negotiations? How Pakistani authorities have successfully over the last couple of months have fulfilled their commitment as per the agreement with the IMF, and what's more required in the coming days in order to further go for the economic stabilization. For that, we are honored to have been joined in the studio by Mr. Faad Waheed. He's Senior Vice President, Islamabad Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Mr. Faad, thank you very much for time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Later on in the show, we'll be joined by another participant. I'll be introducing him later there and then as he joins in. Okay, so Mr. Faad, let's talk about what's your understanding and the analysis when on the very face of it, we'll look at the kind of appreciation and the commending remarks by the IMF review mission chief, Mr. Nathan Porter, for the kind of measures and the efforts Pakistani authorities have taken in order to not only meet those targets as per the standby agreement, but also for the overall economic stabilization in the country.
Well, we really have to look at what happened in the entire standby agreement. So the standby agreement took place in the first tranche came into July. It was $1.2 billion, and we are waiting for the second tranche, which is $710 million. So having said that, IMF's outlook, the first couple of meetings that we've heard the chatter that everything's going fine. They're looking at the outlook is good. It's amazing at this point. FBR is doing its job right. The $9.4 trillion setup is right. They're on track. Similarly, there's a lot of cut downs in our construction project, the development projects. So that's been slashed. There's a lot of curb on the imports. And we haven't really actually managed to, enhance our exports at this point. But, keeping in view the 1.25% ballpark figure within the market rate and the state bank rate, so that's stable at this point. But we do see a surge in the dollar for the past 7-8 days, and I still think it's still going to rise at this point. Having said that, because we're going to start again the same part where Pakistan goes to IMF.
Mr. Faad, you just mentioned that dollar once again getting its value against Pakistani rupee.
Yes.
But earlier we saw there was a continuous appreciation of Pakistani rupee's value against the dollar for quite a substantial time.
Yeah.
What major reasons do you associate with that particular increase in appreciation of rupee's value at that particular time?
See, that's the dilemma we live in Pakistan with. You know, that's a problem with us, that we start implementation of something, and we take it to a measure where everyone's, you know, scared of it, and everybody gets to the hang of it, that, you know, the stick is being handed by the right authorities. But then again, what happens after, you know, a month and a half or 2 months or 3 months? We've seen this program running for 3 months, you know. Everything was stable, the smuggling went down, all the hoarding went down, there were lots of, you know, chaos in people, there was lots of, you know, uncertainty of what's going to happen, and how am I going to invest all these dollars tomorrow? But what happened?
The kind of administrative measures or the
Yeah.
interventions which were taken, they actually yielded the result.
Yes, yes, they got the results, but those administrative measures have to be implemented throughout I would say, throughout the year.
So this thing you have mentioned, okay, so for now we see there's a little bit of depreciation in
Yeah.
rupee's value against the dollar, okay? So we hope that it goes back and regains its value against the dollar. But there's been a continuous bullish trend when we talk about Pakistan Stock Exchange, the psychological barrier also been broken after 6.5 years almost now.
Yeah.
So the major reasons for that.
See, the major reasons.
that confidence among the business community, perhaps?
Yeah. See, when our when our rupee appreciates against the dollar, you know, all the local investors, all the local, you know, the environment is more, you know, conducive for the business to run. So everybody, you know, gears up, and, you know, now they can spend more, they can import more, they can do more business with the same kind of money they were not doing before. And if you keep in mind during this entire process, the interest rate was stable at 22%, and it's still stable today at 22%, whereas the dollar is increasing. But I think, you know, this has been the move where the local circular debt, the internal debt that Pakistan, you know, because 60% of our funding comes from the inside sources. So this is going to take toll on Pakistan. This is going to this is taking the toll on the debts, and that is why, you know, the bullish environment that was, you know, that was available, or I would say, you know, that was being seen from far away, wasn't really, you know, it was just a bubble at that point. Now that the dollar is now going out of control a little bit, I still believe, and I still think, you know, it's going to be the same, and it's going to pursue the same course of action where it's going to touch the 300s.
No, the bullish trend, doesn't it continue today? There was also an increase of around 750 points, if I'm correct with the figure.
Yes,
that continues, right?
That continues.
So that's because of perhaps that confidence that has been regained by the...
Yes, that's a confidence we've gained by the appreciation of our rupee. And that's where the game rightly plays, because we are an import-dependent country. We have to understand that. And everything and every kind of investment we bring in or we do in the country is linked to the dollar itself. So when there's appreciation with the dollar investment within Pakistan, you know, it starts appreciating. But when we see the external factors coming in, you know, now that we are in the IMF trend, and, you know, from the 2nd of November, since this all, you know, jiggle has started, that's because when the IMF team has come into Pakistan and the meetings have started. So everybody's now, you know, in the catch of, they're taking this time out to catch the breath of that, you know, that depreciation of 30 rupees they took in the last 3 months. So this is all where the dollar is now flowing back into the system.
So when we talk about that investor confidence and that positivity that we saw as the PSX had the bullish trend that prevailed at that very particular time. Of course, the administrative actions, particularly that crackdown against the dollar hoarding and smuggling. Also, what about the new initiatives which have been launched that cater to the major areas in which investments are sought by Pakistan, which perhaps in future would definitely go for enhancing the export volume also, that come under the ambit of SIFC, including agriculture. We have seen record yields also when it comes to cotton, wheat and rice crop as well. So what about that particular initiative? How did it also contribute to that very positivity into the market?
See, what Pakistan was lacking in this, you know, entire part was, you know, the security of the investors, the security of the foreign direct investors. So that was, you know, given, and that was made available through the SIFC model, and that council actually worked through this. And now that, you know, when we talk about bringing foreign direct investment to Pakistan, SIFC plays a major role at this point. The confidence of the investor is really amazing at this point. And that being said, Pakistan is self-sufficient in most of the food we procure. So now the other part, we weren't really, I would say, we weren't really paying attention to the agriculture of Pakistan to increase the yield, to look at the exports of this, to look at the possibilities of, doing it to non-conventional markets. But through the SIFC model, what we have seen is, a lot of confidence of foreign investor into Pakistan to come into the agriculture part and export that product.
Specifically talking about agriculture, I'll come back to you and take your detailed opinion regarding that. For now, we are joined by another participant in the show, Dr. Waqar Ahmed. On the phone line is joint Executive Director at Sustainable Development Policy Institute. Dr. Waqar, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on Views on News tonight. We really appreciate that. Since IMF review mission, to review the economic performance of Pakistan's authorities in order to stabilize the economy and meet those targets has been agreed as the part of the standby agreement reached with the IMF. What are your hopes? How do you look at the performance in the first quarter of the fiscal year? And how do you analyze those comments by the review mission chief, Mr. Nathan Porter, appreciating and commending the authorities' efforts in order to bringing the economic stability as well as in meeting those targets?
Yes, thank you very much. I think the harder part of the IMF conditions has actually been met in terms of the raising of electricity tariff, gas tariffs, oil prices remaining flexible, a market-determined exchange rate. All of these were very painful decisions for Pakistan. And of course, the middle-income group, the poorest of the poor, have faced the brunt. But of course, remaining with the commitment which we had with the fund, we have met the harder part of these conditions. Now, there have been some slippages, of course, which could be either in or not in the government control. One of them being, of course, unanticipated expenditures which any government has to do. So yes, IMF has noted that there has been some slippages. One of them, for example, is on the debt side, where, of course, government borrowing is still on the higher side. The second, of course, we see that there are still some expectations on the taxation side, where further revenue collection effort is required. But I'm very hopeful that these should not be some things which should halt the next
Dr.
tranche.
Waqar Ahmed, when you talk about the concession regarding taxation, there has been a development when we talk about Federal Board of Revenue, which has collected 2,748 billion rupees as compared to 2,159 billion against the assigned target of 2,682 billion. So there, it has exceeded $66 billion in terms of collecting the taxes and the revenue from that. So how bigger a role do you think when it comes to one of those conditions which was set in that standby agreement by the IMF, will this particular achievement play in these negotiations, in this review?
Yes, certainly. No, I think it's heartening to see that FBR is making an effort. And of course, we have seen that the number of tax filers has also been on an increase in absolute terms. But of course, IMF looks at things in two, with respect to two main indicators. First is with respect to economic growth, and the other is with respect to untapped sectors. So IMF believes, and I'm sure that Pakistani authorities also believe, that there are still untaxed sectors which may be enjoying certain preferences or exemptions that still need to be taxed. And of course, that is our commitment, that we'll go after those sectors. There are limitations of the caretaker government, of course, that how much they can do or how much they can tax those sectors. There are also limitations of the caretaker government on how much they can persuade the provincial governments to raise their own or increase their tax effort, because large tax bases, including agriculture, property, such taxes come under the provincial realm. So certainly there are limitations which IMF realizes.
Dr. Waqar Ahmed, the Joint Executive Director at Sustainable Development Policy Institute, thank you very much for taking time out for views on news tonight. Really appreciate that. Mr. Faad, now before jumping back to that very same question, the prospects of agriculture sector, the kind of dividends that we can actually reap from it, and especially when it comes to be one of the priority areas as far as the Special Investment Facilitation Council is concerned. Let's specifically talk about the performance by FBR in terms of collecting taxes beyond a set target already. What sort of an impact do you think it's going to have in the negotiations? Because as we know, one of the major conditions in that standby agreement was related to taxes.
See, this is the most important thing any economy can handle. You know, if the revenue agency, the revenue collection agency is actually, you know, hitting the marks or going beyond that mark, it's really positive sign. And to really, you know, ponder over that and more to, you know, think over that, I would say it's going to raise concerns, but not at this point. But it's going to be on the longer run when we want to hit the $9.4 trillion, 9.4 rupee mark. I think that is going to be a concern, but at this point, it's really good to see our FBR performing, you know, the way it should. And I hope if they continue on this pace, you know, somewhere, you know, they might be able to hit the mark just before, you know, it's supposed to happen. So that is something commendable, and we should really appreciate the agency at this point.
But that shows that the system has got that very capacity of actually getting more revenue out of taxes.
You know, the caretaker setup at this point, because there's a lot of, you know, non-political decisions here. So that is something, you know, the unpopular decisions are the most interesting ones, and those are the ones that reap all the benefits for the country. It is a hard time, as the doctor mentioned. You know, this was really hard for Pakistan, for the poor, for the middle-aged, for everyone. It was a really hard time, you know, but this is where we have to go. This is the right direction, and I think the authorities are doing the right job.
This is where the things are going to be streamlined for future.
Hopefully.
Okay, so let's talk about agriculture. This time around, we had the record yields when it comes to wheat, cotton, as well as rice. So agriculture happens to be the first and the foremost priority area when it comes to SIFC. Also, during the previous government, we saw a Green Pakistan initiative being launched with the authorities at that time saying there is going to be a second revolution as far as agriculture is concerned. What are the prospects? How big an impetus do you think under SIFC this agriculture sector is going to have, and what sort of dividends we might be getting out of it?
See, at this point, we have really, you know, it's striking the gold mine at this point. If Pakistan goes through this transition period of actually going through the entire agriculture cycle, even just once, you know, we'll be able to find out what kind of benefits and what kind of dividends can we reap through these new investments, the new agriculture green initiatives. See, we haven't really explored this in Pakistan before, so that is something new, and that is the most important part we need to, you know, rely on. Since we already have the bumper crops of cotton and rice, if you understand right, the Central Asian regions today, they are in expectation of getting rice from Pakistan. Even the East Asian countries, they want rice from Pakistan at this point because their agriculture did not perform this well this year. So that shows and that gives us these signs, you know, the climatic change is already in place. So this gives us signs, you know, that is the world is going to start looking at Pakistan for agriculture. And with this model in place, the SIFC in place, with the security of the investor in place, I really understand and I really think, you know, this is the time when Pakistan really needs to shape it up and we need to work together and bring it back.
Mr. Faad, Senior Vice President at Islamabad Chamber of Commerce and Industry, thank you very much for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Since this IMF review mission is here in Pakistan, and of course there's been a hope that has been expressed by the authorities here in Pakistan that God willing this particular negotiation thing will go further and Pakistan would get that next tranche released for further economic stabilization here in Pakistan. So all eyes are set on that, and hopefully after these negotiations come to an end, Pakistan will be would have achieved that second tranche released. With that hope and with that note, we come to the end of today's show. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.